It is really my pleasure to introduce Chris Bruno this afternoon. Chris is the Director of Marketing at Capital Public Radio. He is responsible for defining and implementing strategic communications and development initiatives that increased brand visibility, audience loyalty, and revenue growth. He's played an integral role in helping to stabilize the organization as it navigates this current financial crisis. Chris has been with Capital Radio since 2018, and he now serves as part of the senior leadership team. So during his tenure with CapRadio, he's had some really amazing accomplishments through his collaboration with other departments in CapRadio. He's helped them achieve a 52% increase in new members compared to the previous year. They've doubled the email donations over the last year, and they've achieved a record number of donations and support. They've unlocked new donor recognition opportunities to support Morning Edition, All Things Considered, and other programs. He's optimized promotional space between news programs, which has led to a 42% increase in vehicle donations. So these are some really amazing accomplishments. He's going today to provide a brief overview about CapRadio and a detailed update on the organization since the California State University audit was released on September 27th last year. Today, he will not be joined by Kathleen Ferraro, but he will offer us a wonderful update and, as I said earlier, an extended Q&A period. So please welcome Chris Bruno. Chris Bruno.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Deborah, and for coordinating all of this and this opportunity. And by the way, Sue, for introducing us. And I do want to just say thank you to all of you as loyal listeners and supporters. We so much appreciate that support and commitment. We've been through quite a lot over the past year, and I'm just glad to have this opportunity to speak to everyone here. So this is going to be a bit of a listener briefing. So we'll keep the overview somewhat short, but Capital Public Radio, so we are a purpose-bound, mission-driven organization. We exist to create more informed, involved, and educated communities, and that is truly the driving force of who we are and what we do in service to our community. We are a 501c3 nonprofit auxiliary organization of Sacramento State. And so the CSU Board of Trustees owns our licenses, and that's how we are able to operate. As an NPR station, we have a partnership with NPR, and we license content like Morning Edition and All Things Considered. We also license content from American Public Media like Marketplace, as well as BBC. And that, along with our local news reporting, our original shows like Insight with Vicky Gonzalez, our music programming, if you enjoy classical music or excellence in jazz, that is what makes up CapRadio and our public service offerings. Our reach, so I'm sure many of you are familiar with 90.9 KXJZ, our news station, or 88.9 KXPR, our music station, but we actually operate 32 fully licensed FM stations, 15 full power, and 17 repeaters, which help extend our coverage. CapRadio proper operates 11. In 2020, we entered into an operating agreement with North State Public Radio in Chico. And the year after, we entered into another operating agreement with KHSU in Humboldt. And essentially, if you look at the reach and the breadth of all of the stations and coverage, we cover a majority of Northern California from Modesto to Eureka. Stationed in the state capital, we have a dedicated state government reporter. We're the only remaining public media organization to have that. And we have also created a partnership with over 50 NPR stations throughout the state. So we deliver daily state government reporting to 50 plus NPR stations that cover 97% of California counties. Ultimately, CapRadio is an essential service to not just Sacramento, but Northern California and California as a whole. And we appreciate the service that we offer to you and to your loyal listening. So that's a little bit of an overview about CapRadio. And I'd like to talk a little bit about all the things that we've had, because it's been quite an eventful year or so. So I know that I do want to talk about the audit that came up in September 27th, and we'll get there. I want to begin a little bit by kind of talking a little bit about the history right before that. So, you know, the audit took place on September 27th, and that came out. Prior to that, at CapRadio with our staff, we started dealing with a few things that were kind of interesting with our board of directors, who decided to engage or look for a new general manager in February of 2023. So this has been a bit of an ongoing saga for us that we've been dealing with. Our previous general manager was supposed to stay on till we got a new general manager, but ended up exiting the company in May. At that point in time, we had an interim general management team that was made up of previous senior leadership. In July, Sacramento State had a new administration with President Wood. In August, our board, along with support from President Wood, made an offer to bring in Tom Carlo as an interim president and general manager. Now, Tom Carlo, he came from KPBS, which is the San Diego public media station. And he had a relationship with President Wood when he was at San Diego State beforehand. Now, Tom Carlo has 47 years of public media experience and had been running that station for, I believe, well, over a decade. And so he came in August as our interim president and general manager. What he came into, and this was the thing, is over that period of time, we didn't exactly know at CapRadio all of the financial issues that would end up becoming pretty apparent later on. And so it slowly started unfolding over that period of time. When Tom came in, he did have to make some pretty dramatic decisions because of our situation. The board, before he came in, had approved a $21 million budget, $21 million in revenue, and $21 million in expenses. What we came to find out is that a significant amount of the revenue we were not going to end up receiving, such as $2 million from Assemblymember McCarty, $2 million from Congresswoman Matsui, $1 million from CPB, the Corporation of Public Broadcasting, and there were other revenues that were overstated. So we ended up realizing that we were closer to a $13 to $14 million organization, except we had $21 million in expenses. So unfortunately, a very difficult decision had to be made early on, and we did go through a round of layoffs. It ended up being around 15% of our organization, and that occurred in August. We did, the team most affected ended up being our modern or contemporary music, which was played on Saturdays on the KXJZ news station. But additionally, there were other mid-level and upper management that were part of that. So once we got through that, and let's, is this going? Sorry. No, I'm just trying to do the next slide. Sorry. Okay, perfect. Thank you. So, so once we got through that period, we ended up hitting the September 27th audit shortly thereafter, which was pretty devastating to all of us. California State University Chancellor's Office found that there were 17 observations and 42 recommendations in terms of deficiencies at Capital Public Radio that pretty much revolved around management oversight, reporting and record keeping, and general processes and procedures. And this was something that we were pretty shocked to discover the extent of it. And it was a huge problem as an organization for us because we are built around trust. Trust with our journalism, trust with the community, our members, and the support that we receive. So when that happened, we started working incredibly diligently to start getting to get into compliance with CSU recommendations, working very closely with Sacramento State, and working to rebuild trust with our listeners and our members. One of the first things that we ended up doing is we worked on transferring all of our accounting and finances to Sacramento State. That was a significant effort and something that was very, very difficult to do as quickly as we did it. But the team at CapRadio, but perhaps more importantly, the team at Sacramento State have done a phenomenal job of working with us throughout all of this. We actually had, by the time this all took place, one person that was in charge of accounting. We now have a team of 5 at Sacramento State working to help us with all of our accounting and financial management. That team has also helped create individual fund accounting. So as I had mentioned, we have 32 FM stations. We are now able to track how money is going into each of these stations and how we're using all of it. They're able now to help upload and manage all of our daily transactions. So this is incredibly important in terms of cash management. I'm not sure if you read some of the stories that had come out around that time saying CapRadio is going to run out of cash in January and things like that. This was all because we were at that point in time unable to know exactly how much cash flow we had because of the situation we were trying to work out. And we've been able to resolve all of that by working diligently with Sacramento State and their tremendous effort helping to manage our finances. We've been able to lower our liabilities, which is significant, and execute payment plans with 7 major vendors. So when the extent of the financial situation that we are in is significant, but we've been able to create, so vendors like NPR, for example, we discovered we had not been paying them for quite some time. And that's a significant problem. So with all of the key vendors that we had, we were able to work out, and we're very, very grateful to NPR and the other vendors for working with us, but we were able to work out payment plans that we can pay over the course of several years to start making up all of the past due payments that we missed over quite some period of time. But we've been able to get that in order, and we are now making payments with all of those vendors. We've also caught up on all of our outstanding bills. And again, it's pretty shocking, but there were over 1,000 outstanding invoices when that took place. And we've been able to catch up on all of those. And this is in a matter of 6 to 7 months, which is pretty remarkable, to be perfectly frank. With Sacramento State's assistance, we have been able to get our fiscal year 2023 finances completed, and we've been able to get our financial audit started. We are hopeful that that will be done at the end of April, but it was a significant effort trying to get through all of that, given the situation that we found ourselves in. We've also been able to reinstitute internal control processes, and that's very, very important when it comes to accountability. at CapRadio. So thank you. And I do just want to say everyone at CapRadio has been working incredibly hard, but this would not have been possible. And I do just want to make this very clear. This would not have been possible without Sacramento State. And by the way, if you ever see Tabitha Leeds, the Senior Director of Accounting at Sacramento State, somewhere around here, tell her thank you from me, because her team and I have the pleasure of working with her quite often these days. But the work that she has done and her team has been significant, and we are incredibly grateful for it. And at this moment in time, essentially, Tabitha is kind of acting like our CFO, if you will, and her team helps us with all of this. So that's a lot on the financial side. So part of this is when we look at the organization today. We're about 63 total staff. Vast majority are at CapRadio at the Sacramento State campus, with some at NSPR and KHSU. We are a leaner organization and a more focused organization. But to put this in perspective, in February 2023, we had around 100 total employees. We're now at 63. So we have seen a fairly significant reduction in staff. And that in part has been necessary for us to operate, because we are not a $21 million organization. We're around a $13 to $14 million organization. And it's very difficult for public media in many cases, because from an expense standpoint, a vast majority of expenses come from payroll, because it does come from staff. So for us, we were around 50 to 60% of our expenses coming from payroll. So it makes it very difficult when a lot of the other expenses are things like NPR programming and everything else. So that is a challenge, but we've also been more creative, because we did go through a hiring spree over the pandemic years. And one of the things that, in part is, how can we operate more efficiently? How can we collaborate more? Because as an organization, a lot of what happened there, we were not necessarily as collaborative as we could or should have been. There were a lot of silos between departments. And so we are much more focused on what we're trying to do, and focusing on audience service. And so that's allowed us to work closer together to think about, how do we do things efficiently to help focus on audience service? So to give you an idea of what some of the things that we've done. So we used to have a host and an anchor for Morning Edition. And then we used to have, again, a host and an anchor for All Things Considered. Well, a typical best practice in public radio is to have a single anchor for each of the key news magazines. So what we ended up doing is we now have one anchor for Morning Edition, one anchor for All Things Considered, and then we added an anchor for middays. So for the first time in CapRadio's 40+ year history, we have a live anchored news coverage from 6 a.m. to 6:30 p.m. And so we've done that more efficiently, and we've been able to increase the number of local newscasts because we added a new midday news anchor. We also looked at how our staff spending their time, and how does that relate specifically to audience service. So you all may be very, very familiar with Steve Milne during Morning Edition, or Devin Yamanaka during All Things Considered. I love them. They're great, by the way. We discovered that they were spending almost an hour every single day managing our non-programming breaks. So by that, we have the key programming, and then we'll have 60, 90, up to 2 minutes of breaks where you'll hear underwriting spots, fundraising spots, things like that. And so they were spending almost an hour managing all of the inventory in those breaks, and then reading all of the underwriting spots and everything related to that. So one of the things that we looked at doing is that we pre-recorded and produced all of our underwriting and our fundraising spots and things like that. And then we worked with our operations and traffic team to automate the break structures. So this now allowed our anchors to work closely with our newsroom to start providing more local news updates throughout the day. So we've actually increased the number of local news updates by 50%. And we've done that. So essentially from 6 a.m. to 6:30 p.m., you will hear a local news update every 15 minutes. And that's by figuring out how can we focus on audience service and use the time of our anchors and other staff for audience service and doing things more efficiently. The music team, for example, and I absolutely love our music team and the classical and jazz programming. I think they are top notch. We really have been trying to focus on more local arts and culture coverage. So one of the things that we realized is based on the way that our hosts have 4 to 5 hour shifts. And what would happen is, you might play a 5, 10, or 15-minute piece. And in between, trying to jump back and forth, it ends up being very, very difficult to multitask when you're kind of jumping in and out of a booth in between these different sets that you're playing. So one of the things that we started doing is our music hosts started pre-recording their shifts right before. And so they might spend, instead of 4 hours just jumping in between the shifts, will take 2 to 3 hours to pre-record their shift and play it, and then have an extra hour or maybe even 2 to do other things. Now, I don't know if we have any Jennifer Reason fans in the and I will say, Jennifer Reason, love midday classical. When we fundraise, I always volunteer to pitch with Jennifer because she's phenomenal. But now she had an opportunity with this extra time to start producing a local artist feature. So every week she goes out and she interviews local artists in the community and produces a feature that we run not just on the music station, but also on our news station. And so we're looking at more and more opportunities. There's other things too that the music team is working on with the extra time, looking at building something like a concert calendar that we can add on air and in one of our newsletters, among many other things. And so a lot of what we're looking at is how can we serve our audience better and do it more efficiently. And so part of the situation that we've had is looking at that opportunity. And I do have to applaud everyone that works at CapRadio, because we are thinking a lot more creatively and saying, if our focus is audience service, how can we do it better and more efficiently? And I will add that we have seen some significant results. So across the nation, I'm very, very sad to say, to some extent, on the news side especially, there's been an overall decline in radio listening. Even over at a place like KQED, we've seen news listenership drop by about 30% over the last couple of years. CapRadio dealt with an even larger drop in listenership. We actually hit an all-time low in September of 2023. This is when we started working on all of these updates with the local news, the newscast, the live anchored coverage throughout the day. I am very, very excited to say that in February of this year, we got the latest Nielsen books. Our news station hit a 9-month weekly listening high, and our music station hit a 12-month weekly listening high. And we're very, very excited. It's not yet back up to our pre-pandemic numbers, but we're very hopeful that as we continue to think about audience service and serving the community and focusing on radio as our #1 priority, that we'll continue to see listenership increase and engagement increase. So one of the other things that I am very excited about, and we did this throughout everything else that was going on post-audit, is that we have a new 88.9 KXPR tower. Now, I'm not sure if everyone is aware, but this is pretty significant. So the new tower, and we launched this around the end of 2023. And keep in mind, this is about 2 decades in the making. So this, this has been quite some time, but it has has a significantly farther reach. So if you're out in Placer or El Dorado counties, you previously couldn't hear our classical and jazz programming at all, practically. Now it should be clear as a whistle. And we also designed it in a way to make sure that it had enhanced building penetration, because we know our music audience does tend to listen at home and in the office. And it's very, very exciting. And I wanted to bring that up because it is something that we have started hearing a lot of positive responses to the new tower. And I also want to take that opportunity because I know there were a lot of things that were going out in the press with just some of what happened with layoffs and everything else, that CapRadio is 100% committed to our music station and service. Classical and jazz is very important. We actually serve as the exclusive broadcast source of classical and jazz in the region. And we are committed to that service, and we understand how important it is to our audience and to us and who we are as an organization, which, by the way, when we did start back in 1979, we were KXPR, the classical station. So it is deep, deep in our history and roots. Throughout all of this, one of the things that we were significantly concerned about was overall support with the September 27th Chancellor's audit, as well as everything else. We were very, very concerned about losing trust with the community because of everything that had happened. And one of the things for the staff that are left, and I do want to make this point, since that occurred, essentially everyone in the senior leadership at CapRadio, our previous board of directors, and the past administration at Sacramento State are all no longer here. So everyone that was involved in all of the things that had happened are no longer with CapRadio. And by the way, in case folks are not aware, we did have a vast majority of our board resign after the CSU audit release. So our senior leadership team is new, our board of directors resigned, and we have recently repopulated it. And it's very exciting to have a wealth of talent and highly engaged board of directors. And President Wood's administration has been incredibly supportive of CapRadio, and we're very, very excited about moving forward and rebuilding, but not just really rebuilding, building a new CapRadio, because we do not want to operate the way that we did that got us into this place. But as I say all of that, we were very much concerned about community support, because we did break the trust of the community. And as much as we want to rebuild that trust, we were concerned how the community might respond. And it has been incredibly inspiring, because the staff that are at CapRadio right now are 100% dedicated to public service and the work that we do. And the community has responded in kind. And again, I thanked you at the beginning, and I'll take a moment to thank you again, because we can never thank you enough. To everyone that supports CapRadio, thank you so much. Your support is what keeps us going. Your support helps inspire us and everyone at CapRadio who has been through so much to keep serving the community. And at this point, it is crucial. Member support makes up 70% of our annual funding. So every single supporter makes a significant impact. And ultimately, the outpouring of support that we've had has it's been nothing short of remarkable. Just to also talk a little bit outside of that, besides membership, underwriting, which is essentially, you know, local businesses and corporate support, is another key piece of funding for us. Grants as well. And the Corporation for Public Broadcasting does provide some support. It's usually around $1 million a year. Right now, we have not received the funding from CPB because of everything that occurred with the CSU audit and our finances. We have been working, and Sacramento State's accounting team for us has been working very, very hard to get our 2023 fiscal year 2023 financials in order and audited so that we can receive that. We're also working with CPB, and we have the Inspector General that is going through and doing an audit, and we're working closely with them. But it is possible that we could receive some of the funding that we were supposed to receive. So that is an active piece of the puzzle that we're working on right now. So as we look at moving forward, so one of the things that I do want to say, so we had Tom Carlo, who was the interim president and general manager. He came on in August, and he essentially did a phenomenal job of helping us navigate a very, very difficult point in time. And if I'm being perfectly frank, in September, I don't know if any of us were sure or certain that CapRadio would exist. It was a serious, serious situation that we were navigating. The team truly rallied under the guidance of Tom Carlo, and we have essentially stabilized our core operations. And debt obligations aside, CapRadio is essentially a sustainable organization that's poised to thrive. We still have to deal with the debt obligations, and we are working on that. And I'd be happy to talk a little bit more about that or answer some questions about that. But we have made a significant amount of progress in that time. So Tom, he ended up stepping down in February. So Tom, he was a San Diego State employee as the general manager at KPBS, which means that he was part of the CalPERS system. So when he came, he was retired for a few years and came out of retirement to help us navigate this incredibly difficult situation. But being part of that system, he's a retired annuitant. So he had a limited number of hours available to him. And so what he did and what he worked with us on doing was very strategic. And so he stepped down a little bit early. And our board announced Frank Maranzino as our new interim general manager. And Tom has been using the rest of his hours to act as a strategic advisor to help with this transition. And both Frank Maranzino and I worked very, very closely with Tom. And so he's been a very, very helpful guide as we've worked on continuing all the work that we've done over the last 6 to 7 months. Tom will also, well, crossing my fingers, although I'm pretty sure that he will get appointed, will be joining our board when he does officially end his consultant gig in June. So we're very excited to have his ongoing support because he was so important and valuable in helping us navigate a truly, truly difficult period of time. Now, moving forward, we are a much, much more focused organization. Previously, we were doing a lot of things, and I think we ended up losing a little bit of focus. And our number one priority right now is serving our broadcast radio audience. And some of the things that we're looking and we're going to focus on doing is how can we expand our timely on-air news and local reporting. We've already started doing some of that, but we're working on a lot more, and how we can utilize our resources to make sure we have a relevant local presence and make sure that we can provide that to our audience in a timely manner. Our state government reporting is incredibly important, and it serves not just the state of California, but at times NPR. And especially as we navigate a presidential election year, acting as a voice of truth, balanced, fact-based, no hysteria news is more important than ever. And we are going to make sure that we double down on serving our communities with that kind of information to make an informed decision when they're voting. Also, arts and culture and local arts and culture coverage are very, very important to us. And we believe that there is a need in the local community for us to increase that coverage. And we're going to be working more and more with the music team and others to try to figure out how we can continue to deliver more of that coverage to our audience. And I don't know if any of you are newsletter readers, but the one thing that's not radio that we're going to be focusing on is something called Sacramento. And Sacramento is a wildly popular newsletter focused on people who want a deeper understanding and greater involvement in the place they call home. The person that leads the Sacramento newsletter, by the way, is Claire Morgan. And Claire Morgan is a former editor-in-chief at the State Hornet. I know, fun little fact. But it's a pretty exciting newsletter. And what's been exciting for us is beyond our core radio broadcasts and everything that we're doing, the response that we've had from the audience for that newsletter. We get people that are supporting CapRadio because of that newsletter and what it means to them. People talking about it in the same light as Morning Edition or Excellence in Jazz, which to me is pretty phenomenal. So we'd like to work on trying to continue to expand sort of the hyper-local coverage in the Sacramento region that we're offering because we do see an interest and demand for that type of content. And the other thing is looking at collaborating and working more with Sacramento State. You know, one of the things is the educational mission. And I think, well, not just identified in the CSU audit, but truly we have sort of separated and we're very, very independent of Sacramento State. And I'm not 100% sure why or how that kind of grew apart, but we have a robust and thriving community of students. And when we talk about offering real world experience and something that can benefit not just the education of students, but CapRadio as well, this is an exciting opportunity that we're trying to work with Sacramento State to get off the ground, because we think that the future journalists of tomorrow will come from places like Sacramento State through their experiences with CapRadio. And it's incredibly important. So a State of Local News 2023 report by Northwestern said that the number of journalists in California has decreased 68% since 2005. So the more that we can engage students' real world experience and provide that kind of training and experience, the more we can support the future of local journalism, which, to be perfectly frank, is at stake. And it's something that's very, very important for the future and for local communities.